It's a windy, rainy, nasty day in Seattle. It's just right for a filming session in front of the fire. Today we're going to talk about thesauri, and we'll go deep into the different parts of thesauri and talk about a number of different kinds. But let's just start off with some simple concepts about a thesaurus. Overall, the way I like to think about thesauri is that they're semantic maps. They're a set of terms and phrases that are interrelated to describe a domain of information. And so that's how it is from the standpoint of what it's there for. It's there to describe the domain. Choose a domain, choose the set of words that describe that domain, create relationships between those words, the kinds of relationships that we've talked about before in this course, and there you have a thesaurus. So that's conceptually what it is. We can use the concepts that we've been working with in this class to understand a thesaurus in, I think, in a more universal way, a way that relates it to the other things that you've heard of. For example, a thesaurus has a hierarchy. It has a hierarchy of terms inside of terms. In the thesaurus vocabulary, it's called broader terms and narrower terms. Those terms, by the way, are words or small phrases usually. And each term has relationships to other terms. The first kind of relationship is a hierarchical relationship. Also commonly in a thesaurus, you see an index. You see an alphabetical index of the terms themselves. So those terms are ordered alphabetically to give you a way of getting to any term, seeing if a term is in there. So as you remember, the index works to give you random access and to answer the question, is it in here? In this case, is a term, a particular term that I have in my mind, is it in there? I'll use the alphabetical index to try and get me there. The hierarchy, on the other hand, answers the term, what's in here? So we'd use the hierarchy of a thesaurus to get a feeling for what's this information domain about? What are all the different categories and subcategories that characterize that domain? So it has both of those access methods built into it. It also actually has cross-references built into it. You can go from a term to a related term. You'll see later that we have relationships, for example, the relationship of synonym. This term is a synonym for the one that I'm on. This term is an antonym. It's the opposite of the one I'm on. In fact, you can specify any set of relationships you want, any kinds of associations from term to term inside of the thesaurus. In addition, you'll see a little later that you can have sequences in a thesaurus as well. You can decide, for example, under a particular category, under a particular level of the hierarchy, what's the order of the children under that hierarchy? So which one would I like you to look at first? Which one perhaps is most important? And I'd like you to see that one first under the main heading or under the main category. Okay, so in fact, a thesaurus can really implement simultaneously all of the different kinds of access structures that we've seen before. It's a hybrid structure. It brings in aspects of all those different kinds of access structures into one large overarching access structure. And that's why it's capable of semantically describing all the relationships inside a domain, because it can take care of all those different kinds of relationships. Okay, we're going to talk about a couple of different types of thesauri. You'll see the garden variety or the Roget class of thesaurus, and that's really there to map the synonym and antonym territory of the English or any other language for that matter. And you'll see that that's a fairly simple thesaurus, and we'll start there. The kind of thesaurus we're really aiming for, however, is not the garden variety. Later we'll call it the pro version, but it's a thesaurus that can really define the semantics of a discipline. So if you look at the most popular thesauri on the web, for example, there's an art and architecture thesaurus. There's a thesaurus of medical terms. These are all thesauri that do a lot more than simply tell you what words, synonyms, and antonyms are. They tell you all about the important words that describe a discipline. You might think of it as the keyword index on hypersteroids, a keyword index that has all the keywords of a discipline but gives you relationships between those keywords that allow you to make much more out of that index than you would if you just had a flat keyword index. We can look at a thesaurus really in two different ways, depending on how we look at what the info types are or what the items are. The thesaurus itself, independent of anything else, just a standalone thesaurus, you can think of that as a complete info base. The items in the info base are terms. Each term is an item, and in fact, as you'll see later, we can put as much detail inside of a term as we want. We can create a full-fledged information item out of a term. So if the term is the information type and each individual term is an item of that type, then we can look at the access structures of hierarchies and indexes and cross-references and sequences as relating those terms. So that the thesaurus itself can be thought of as an independent info base. An info base is something that has information types, information items, and access structures in it. If we look at each term as an information item and they're all of the class term or of the type term, then we can see that the the thesaurus itself constitutes a complete info base. On the other hand, what a thesaurus is usually used for is to characterize, catalog, categorize, index another domain. So we might have all the domain might be all of the articles that have been written in the health sciences field. And we're going to use the health sciences or the mesh thesaurus to categorize those. In that case, the items are actually the articles, and the thesaurus is simply a way of creating enough different access structures so that we can appropriately categorize or index or relate all of those articles together. So either the thesaurus is outy, and it's an outy complex access structure that allows us to get access to another body of information, for example, a body of articles in a particular discipline, or you can think of the thesaurus itself as simply a standalone information base. We're going to use, in most of the examples that we work with, we're going to really be looking at the thesaurus as a standalone information base because there's enough to do just in organizing the thesaurus itself. But you should realize that in general, there's a next step after that, which is now that you've got your thesaurus organized and you've got all the topics, all of the terms correctly interrelated, now you apply those terms to another base of information. So the entire thesaurus becomes a single access structure that allows you to appropriately categorize and index other items. So it's a kind of a complicated idea, which is why it's taken us this long to get to it.